How you doing, man?
Cool.
How's your weekend going?
Been fine.
Yeah, awesome. Been to the falls before?
When I was 8.
When you were 8. So the memories are faded?
No, I can vividly remember standing by the falls, yeah. But I was with my dad and my brother and sister.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome.
We did a whole summer holiday and then upstate New York. So then Dad was like, yeah, we're so close, let's drive up to the falls. And it was like a day trip.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, it's amazing. Me and Brian were just talking about it, and it's just crazy how people local like me, we do kind of take it for granted, but it is something else.
Oh, it's majestic.
Yeah.
Oh, incredible. Yeah, and we got quite a view from the hotel room. Amazing.
I was actually one of the few things when the hotels opened up during COVID, because there was nothing to do. They actually had the rooms really cheap, so we got the fall. Me and the wife, we just got away for the night and got the falls, and we had the view of the falls, and because otherwise that room's like $400 something.
Oh wow!
And I'm not paying that.
Yeah, man. No, it's very, very cool. We had some good meals here. Visited wine country.
Yeah.
I'll be back.
Yeah, awesome. That's great to hear. You've had an extensive movie career, TV career, but again, a classically trained actor. Mm-hmm. Was that always the goal?
Well, no, kind of interesting. I mean, when I was a child, my dad was a single parent, and so on Saturdays he told each of us kids, it's like, hey, Saturdays you have to do something. I don't care what it is. My brother took guitar lessons. My sister danced ballet. I tried the guitar, but my brother was better than me, so I didn't want to compete. And I found this Saturday full day children's acting, like theater classes. But I do travel from what is called Bethesda, Maryland, which is outside D.C., by bus all the way to downtown D.C. And in those days, Washington was like the murder capital of the United States. So it was kind of dangerous, but my dad sent me down there. Oh, thank you, brother.
Yes.
Yeah, my dad sent me down there alone, and this gentleman was running this class. And what it's like, you get some feedback from people. It's like, oh, well, I'm kind of funny, and people are responding. So I did those for a while. I was asked to turn professional and join the Arena Stage, which was the professional theater in D.C. It's still there, repertory theater. And my dad said no. Because I had been in a summer, it was like Shakespeare under the Washington Monument. And I was in a production of Hamlet. I wasn't Hamlet. I was just a page boy, but still I was working with Richard Burton's uncle. Philip Burton was the director, and some top New York actors. So it was quite an experience. But my dad said, no way, I'm not going to let you turn professional at the age of 10. He said, you finish high school, and if you still want to act, you can do whatever you want to do. And so in high school, I played basketball, and admittedly, I wasn't the greatest student. Not that I was stupid, but I just wasn't into school until my father threatened military school. And then I got straight A's in my senior year, and by the skin of my teeth got into college. And when I went to a small upstate school in Maryland called Frostburg State College, it was very fortuitous. I had a professor who was brilliant and exposed me at first to Stanislavski and method acting, and he was very serious. And I purely did the Theater 101 course as just an easy A. And then part of the requirements were I either had to work backstage, build the set, or get cast in a role. And they were doing William Inge's Bus Stop. So I auditioned for that, and I got the part of Bodecker. In the movie, it was Marilyn Monroe who played Cherie. And that's when I got bit. And shortly after that, walking through the student union building, saw a thing on the bulletin board said, study abroad in England. I thought that'd be kind of cool. Sent away for the prospectus. This prospectus said, oh, you can study at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. And I thought, wow, that would be amazing. So I got in, and when I got to England, it was totally false. There was no chance of me studying at the Royal Academy. But the woman who ran the theater program at this little place called Richmond College. She, her husband was a fairly prominent English TV and film actor called Anton Rogers, and he became my mentor. His wife, then ex-wife, Morna, had arranged for him to direct me in some Chekhov one-act plays. And then while we were doing this and became friendly, he was just like, so what are you going to do when you finish this year? And I said, I guess I'll go back to Maryland and finish my degree. And he said, no, you're not doing that. And I thought, what? He said, no, you're a real actor. You're going to stay here and get trained properly. And I was like, okay. And sure enough, he kind of coached me through the audition process, and I got in everywhere except for the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. And that was and his sole focus was I was going to go to a place called the Drama Center, London, which was where Colin Firth, Tom Hardy, Michael Fassbender, and me, we all trained. And as I was leaving Drama Center, Colin Firth was coming in. But it's a tremendous training. I got the full range of classical training from traditional English stagecraft to European French styles of acting to we had a woman called Uta Hagen who was a method acting teacher in New York, and her protege Doreen Cannon was my teacher. So I got the full range of training, and it was 3 years. It was like a conservatory. We were we were at school 18 hours a day, and when I went to the school, about 45 of us started, and only 16 of us finished because they had a cut every term. Like people would show up, like it would be like, say for example, the actor Maxwell Caulfield, right? He went on to do the second movie rendition of Grease. Tremendously good-looking guy, but he wasn't responding. He's not a classical actor, so he just wasn't responding to the training. They didn't disparage him, but they just said, "Look, there's really nothing we can do for you. Our advice is go to Hollywood right away, and you'll do really well." And I'm sure he did. He went there and was starring in movies and doing great. They did the same thing to Pierce Brosnan. Pierce Brosnan was at Drama Center well before me, but and I've done movies with Pierce, and they told him the same thing. And sure enough, what did he do? Went and became Remington Steele and James Bond. So, but yeah, so they had cuts, and if you managed to get to the final performance year was when you actually managed to do like 6 productions during the year. And that was great exposure because, people would come in and recruit you to go to various repertory theaters throughout England. And when I finished up, I stayed in London and worked for a while. And then in the interim, I got married, and my wife and I went to New York. I toured the whole United States playing Richard II. And when we finished the year tour, my wife, who was English, wanted to return because her parents, came from a very wealthy family, but they had purchased a site which was called the Mill at Sonning, and it was a Huntley Palmer flour mill that supplied flour. The site itself dates back to the Doomsday Book. It's fascinating, and it's a little islet in the middle of the Thames. And the actual wheel was the original wheel, and it's massive. But they built a dinner theater, which was very, unusual in England. And just now, my ex still runs it, and it's been voted best theater in England the last 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. And they don't do, serious classical stuff. They do, easily accessible stuff, so people can, relax and have a bit of fun and have a good meal. So the interesting thing is that on the far side of the islet, there was this Georgian mini mansion home that was abandoned for a long time. And then just about, say, 5-6 years ago, it was purchased by someone you might know, George Clooney, and his wife Amal. And then they redid the home and inhabited it. They actually planted like 500,000 pounds of cypress trees around their whole compounds so that the paparazzi couldn't photograph their children and stuff. But George visits the theater, buys dinner, drinks for the actors, and the audience now knows that he's there. So a lot of people come to the theater not necessarily to have dinner or see the play, but they want to see if they can see George Clooney. So anyway, but that's the sort of roundabout tale, and the point being is it's life is kind of serendipitous. Like you never know when you meet the person you fall in love with. You meet you run into a business that sort of you spark to and have a full life's career in, and that's kind of my story. I've managed to, because of Anton. I mean, who knows what would have happened if I'd returned to the States? It would have been a different journey altogether.
For sure. Yeah, you mentioned Niagara Falls for coming here and talking with Brian earlier. James Cameron being from just down the road, both integral in both of your careers. I mean, he was cast in Terminator. You were cast in Aliens. What was that like?
Oh my, interesting. I just finished the movie called Revolution with Al Pacino, and Hugh Hudson, the director of Chariots of Fire, was directing Revolution. And when I finished that movie, got a call from the agent to say, "Hey, you have to go to Pinewood Studios. There's this movie called Aliens." I had never seen Alien. And I was like, I don't know what this is. And of course, back in those days, it's not like today. Today when you get a call for an audition, you don't even see a script. You don't even meet anybody anymore. That's the sad part of the pandemic, and it was happening long before. But now we do this thing called self-taping. Like you tape yourself and send in the tape. I think it's a real ridiculous process in terms of casting for a movie, but because you're never face to face with people, and it's false because in a self-tape, I've learned from casting director friends that producers just go, nah. Oh, that's got a good face, and they never even look at your work. Whereas if you're in the room, they experience you, your energy, and then they're able to direct you, which is the real key for a director. Is like, can this guy take a direction? Can he understand it and digest it and perform it? And that's how I used to win jobs all the time, because I can make an adjustment like that because of my training. So anyway, so I got called into Pinewood Studios, and I met with Gail Ann Hurd, Jim's then wife, producer, fantastic lady.
Showrunner for The Walking Dead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, one of the co-creators, actually, amazing woman and powerhouse producer. But we sat down, and, of course, she asked the proverbial, so what have you been up to? And admittedly, I launched into probably the longest yarn I have ever told in my life. I made it sound like I had the next best role to Al Pacino. And it worked. I mean, I don't know, honestly, I didn't go in planning to lie. It's just she said that, and you're kind of on the spot. She kept asking, so what was the role like? And I launched into this thing, and it just came out of my mouth. And sure enough, the next time, it was like 2 or 3 weeks later, I get called to downtown London to meet with Jim and Gail, where I read for Jim. And funnily enough, all the characters in Aliens, we all read Bill Paxton's line. We all read Hudson. Even Jeanette read Hudson. And then when I'm in the room, Jim said, "Hey, that was great. Can you read this?" And it was Drake. Read that, and then they said, "Thanks very much," and never didn't hear anything. 3 weeks later, you're going to go out to Pinewood Studios. You're meeting Jim and Gail again. Go to Pinewood, walk in the office, and that's what blew my mind the first time. Because on the walls, because Jim's a very fine artist as well. I don't mean like stick figure. I mean, he's a brilliant artist. On the walls, in sequence, were storyboards of the exact shots of the movie, plastered on 4 walls in sequence all the way around. I mean, it was extraordinary. And I was just in awe. And then they dropped the bomb, and they said, "Listen, you're here because we want you to play the role of Drake." And you can just imagine, like, my jaw hit the table, and they handed me the script, and they said, but there's one provision here. It's that you know, we love your look, but you need to bulk up. So they said, don't worry, we're going to pay for it. We got a trainer for you. So starting in like what it was like a couple of weeks or a month, you're going to be coming to Pinewood every day. We got a car. It's going to come pick you up in the morning. You're going to spend the whole day at Pinewood, and we're just going to work you to death. And I went from 185 to 245.
Wow.
And it was not, there wasn't, I mean, and I had free reign, like it was great. I could go to the Pinewood cafeteria, which was really nice food, and I could have anything I wanted because this guy, this trainer, John Lees, who was a farmer from Northern Ireland, massive man, strong as an ox. He was the guy, or the power, when Sigourney is in the power loader machine, he is dressed in black. When you watch the movie, and you won't be able to see him, because it's like Kabuki theater. You know, in Kabuki theater, they have this guy who's all black, and he drapes the costume on the main character, and it all has symbolic meaning, like how it's draped and what it is. But he was dressed all in black, and he was the power behind. He was lifting the power loader structure, and Sigourney. And you know, Sigourney is like 6'2". She's tall. I don't imagine she probably weighed 180 pounds because she's so tall. But he moved the whole thing. That's how strong he was.
Wow.
Well, he worked me to death. But I could go to the cafeteria and say, yeah, I want 2 of those T-bones, and I want 6 eggs, and give me potatoes, and I could just, because he was feeding me this amino acid liquid that just increased my metabolism. So it wasn't like doing, you know, juice, you know. It was just increased my metabolism. I was just hungry all the time. Of course, I was working out like crazy. But my then wife, you know, I'd come home, and I'd walk in the house, and I would just be starving after having pigged out all day. And I'd be like, hey, what's for dinner? Like, yeah, just some pasta or whatever. And my wife was very strong woman. She was like, oh, no. You can take that right out the front door, and you can come back in again and just calm down, leave that at the door, and then we'll talk, you know. And then I was like, oh, you're right, I'm sorry. But it all worked, and worked out like crazy and really bulked up. And then by the time the Hollywood guys came, and I was in supreme condition, I was just tell you some of the other people, we got trained by these SAS officers, I mean former officers, but they were real SAS guys. So the first call was like 4:30 a.m. and the first thing we did was a 5-mile run. And it wasn't like, oh, let's go for a little jog. It was like, move. And you were running your ass off. And the funniest thing was Bill Paxton, you know, he's going, hey man, like, you know, I just got off a flight from LA, and I'm really, you know, I got jet lag, and like, do I have to do this? And they were like, screw you, buddy. And he's like, oh, geez. You know, it was hysterical. But that time we spent, which was the key to Shawshank and a movie like Aliens and Departed being so successful, is that we rehearsed. We actually had camaraderie, and we formed bonds and relationships so that. And I think especially with Aliens, that's what shows up most, is because what I hear from fans and even reviews is just how real we were. I mean, I've had Marines, the real people, say, man, like, you know, you're the reason why I joined.
Wow.
Yeah, and, you know, and I had another Marine tell me, yeah, in Iraq, like, you know, when we had, like, Friday, Saturday nights, we could, as a group, like, nominate the film we wanted to see. And if we had a big mission coming up, we always had Aliens, because it got us all pumped up, ready for the mission. I mean, honestly, you know, so imagine the middle of Iraq, here are guys like getting really juiced from what we did, and they all commented. They said, "You guys were real, man. You acted like one of the fans here met me, and he was like, he said talking about me. He said." You were so real because you were able to, like, in the scene when we were all like in like our like locker room and doing the pull-ups and everything else. He said, you were so real because you and Vasquez were like, joking around with each other, and then when you had to straighten up and like talk to Gorman or somebody, you were like, yes, sir. You automatically switched, which is usual in the military. Like, the regular people, but when an officer shows up, like, you're like, you straighten up. So, I mean, that's a real compliment and amazing, but it's also Jim's foresight, to, not just let us just slide in and kind of half-ass do it. Like, he was determined, like, we were really going to get, trained in a boot camp. And you see it on film. So, yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned Shawshank. When I was talking with Michael Berryman yesterday, he was talking about having a conversation with Louise Fletcher and how she was just so worried that people were going to hate her because of her performance as Nurse Ratched. And I mean, we've seen, obviously with the internet now, we've seen, I can't remember the young actor's name, but the guy who played Joffrey Baratheon in Game of Thrones, like, that kid just got so much hate. But that's a testament to how good a fucking actor that guy is.
For sure.
If you could hate that character so much. So, I mean, not that maybe that was in your head, but Boz. I mean, yeah. I mean, how much more of a hated character is there in cinema in probably the greatest movie ever made?
Yeah. That's just mind-boggling. But no, it's an interesting thing. Hey, man, thank you so very much. Yeah, real pleasure. Thank you, sir. Absolutely. See you again. There are a number of occasions after the film opened where, for example, my youngest daughter was born shortly after, and I was taking her to Cedars-Sinai Hospital just for a checkup. And, she was asleep, and she was only like 3 months old or so. And I'm in an elevator going up to get a checkup, and as the doors are closing, this woman, like, enters through, and she looks at me for a second, then she turns away. I didn't think anything of it. And as the door shut, shortly after, she goes, "Oh my God, you're that man. Oh, and you have a baby?" And she woke up my daughter, and I was like, "Lady, Jesus." I said, "I'm an actor, for God's sake." And I said, "You just woke up my daughter, and like, what's going on?" And she was like, she rushed out of the elevator. Or once I was in Costco, years later, with my girls when they were little, and some lady just passes by. She goes, "You're disgusting."
Oh,
yeah, my girls are saying, "Daddy, why did that lady say that?" And I said, "Honey, it's a movie Daddy did. It's something you can't see." And so it is a compliment.
Yeah, no doubt.
And to be honest, as proud as I am of the performance, it kind of worked to my detriment because, I would never be seen for anything comic, and I'm reasonably funny, but they wouldn't see me. They'd say, no, he's that guy, and he's not funny. He's just a dramatic actor, and it kind of worked against me for a while, and that says more about Hollywood than me.
Definitely,
just because they have like a myopic view, but. Hey, getting the role of Shawshank came at a time in my life when, wow, boy, did I need that one. Going through my second divorce, losing my second family, I was living alone, and I'd done my audition and thought, like, I left the audition actually with a real achievement. It was the first audition I'd ever done where I did a perfect audition because I just talked the character. I wasn't acting the character. I was just talking. I was the character. And I left that one thinking, oh my God, I said, God, I finally know how to do it, And then I didn't hear anything for 3 months. Wow. And I was really going through a rough time. And one Saturday morning, I'm getting up to do like my morning run just to keep the whole thing going, right? And I get a call from Frank Darabont. And he tells me the whole story. He's like, dude, you've got the role. He said, filled me in on the fact that Rob Reiner, who was then running Castle Rock, didn't want me. He kept saying, who is that? We don't want this guy. Who is this guy? And Frank kept pushing me. And then what happened was, the reason I didn't hear was because he made Frank go to New York City and audition like everybody. And then what happened was they came back to L.A. and at the Castle Rock offices, they have a theater there, and for all the supporting roles, not Tim and Morgan, but they played the top 5 choices of each of the supporting characters. And Frank, before it started, went to the projectionist, slipped him a tape, and said, because I was the last one up, when the first 5 play, he said, slip this in at the end right away. Didn't tell Rob Reiner. So the first 5 play, and then, there's another one. And apparently Frank, when the audition finished, he stood up, turned to Rob Reiner and said, and if you don't think that's the guy for the role, you're a fucking idiot. And Reiner was like, okay, he's the guy, and thank God. And so, I'm so grateful to Frank Darabont. Like you need angels in this world, whether it's your spouse or your parent or your brother or somebody who's going to be behind you till death. Like, God bless Frank for sticking by me, and there you go. And then now, none of us had an idea that Shawshank would be so revered, and but it is a masterful script, and it's Roger Deakins, what an amazing cinematographer, and just wow, you watch that film and you wish they made more like it,
Right. Yeah.
But it's the crazy thing about Hollywood, and I've seen the evolution, it's because I've been there for 30-some years, and I've seen it steadily move away from, good dramatic stories to what we have to watch now. We watch DC and we watch Marvel, and you see European films or Canadian produced films because the beauty of Canada, you guys support the arts.
Yeah.
You guys fund the arts, which is brilliant because then young voices get a chance. Hollywood's it's a money game.
Yeah.
So I feel really proud that I was in Hollywood making movies when it was kind of like, hey man, thanks. They like the heyday. Real pleasure. All the best. Yeah. So it's great. Yeah.
I'm going to hit you with one more, and then we're going to go to questions. We recently lost both Ron Masick and Angela Lansbury. You were on a handful of episodes of Murder, She Wrote. How great was it working with Angela?
I'm going to cry. No, because Angela Lansbury, I wrote her a card. I'd had it in mind for years, and I wrote her a card like about 8 months ago to thank her because I did like 4 episodes, and I played different roles. But the first episode I ever did with her, get on set at Warner Brothers and Universal, and the AD comes and goes, by the way, Miss Lansbury, we'd like to see you and run through the scene for today. And I was like, because I had playing an Irish character. So I go to her big ass trailer, and there she is, like icon, amazing actress, and we sit down and we're doing the thing, and she's like, "Oh, that's an excellent accent. That's perfect, darling." And she said, "I just need to tell you, that stay with it. Talent will out. Talent will out." And I said, "Thank you so much." And then, sure enough, and she was the only game in town. I swear to you. In our SAG rules, like there's a top scale you can get per episode of TV, and back then it was like $5,800 or something. Well, she was paying $10,000. That's what a lovely, committed producer, actress she is. She knows that it's like, between each episode, like you're scrambling, right? And so she would pay $10,000, and then she did me the biggest favor ever. So what happened was I had won a role for a TV movie of the week that starred Liza Minnelli, Jennifer Grey, Kathy Bates, and Beatty's sister, Shirley MacLaine. Shirley MacLaine, Liza Minnelli, Kathy Bates, Jennifer Grey, and me. And it was a story set in New York City, and it was kind of based around this, tenement building and whether it was going to go co-op. And I was sort of the tenement organizer. So I was a bit of a socialist and I was, organizing everyone, and we're going to go co-op, and throughout the story, it turns out Liza Minnelli takes a fancy to me. And the final scene was absolutely brilliant because we win, we're going to go co-op, and it was written by the man. It was directed by the man who wrote On Golden Pond. So we had rehearsed. I had done my costume fitting. We were ready to shoot. And my agent, no fault of Angela's, but my agent had double booked me. The movie overlapped with my last episode of Murder, She Wrote by like a half a day. So big hoo-ha. We were scrambling, and I went to Angela. And I said, listen, I have a huge favor to ask you. I said, I've got this movie I'm supposed to start in a couple days, and I'm supposed to be shooting that morning, and I don't know if you can help me out. If you could shoot me out in the morning, that would be great so I can make it to the other set. And this is how wonderful she was. She said, darling, anything for you. She called in the entire crew at 4:30 in the morning, like 2 hours earlier than normal, to set up, and we were going to start filming and get me out of there by 11 a.m. so I could get to the other set by noon. We're filming. Suddenly I have an AD approach me, and he goes, Mark, you have a call on the set phone. Now that's, in all the sound stages, there is a set phone. You only ever get calls on the set phone when there's like an emergency or a problem. So I'm thinking, oh shit, what's going on? Pick up the phone, my manager's there, and he goes, just take your time, don't go to the other set. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, Shirley MacLaine won't alter her schedule. She won't wait for you to come. So they've decided they have to recast. This is after I'd rehearsed, costume fitted, and I was beside myself. And that morning, as a thank you to Angela, I bought her a bouquet of flowers that were this big, and she was upset with me. And I said, Angela, it's not me. I said, I'm so sorry. You did everything you possibly could, but I don't know what's wrong with Miss MacLaine. And sure enough, my agents cast or gave another one of their clients who took on the role, and this was a comic role. And the beauty of the thing was I played this organizer, and the final scene we have this big party, and I'm slow dancing with Liza Minnelli, and she's kind of coming on to me, and she's telling me how much she loves me, and it was like the most brilliant character arc. I said, honey, that's so sweet, but don't you know I like boys? And she was, you what? But it was a brilliant, brilliant character. And so I promptly fired my agent, and I would never work with Shirley MacLaine, even if it was possible, because she was a pig. She was a pig. Yeah, she sat around telling like N-word jokes.
Oh, jeez.
Oh yeah. I was disgusted. I was looking at her like, and then she was so gross. One day we were rehearsing, she was wearing this big flowy skirt, and she was had a cold or something. But she took her skirt and went, and I was like, oh yeah, it was so gross. I was like, and it's Shirley MacLaine, But when she was telling these off-color jokes and she was laughing and actually, to Liza was kind of like chucking along with her, and I thought, this is really weird. But yeah, and the movie got great reception. It was a really nice story. But yeah, so that's Holly weird for you.
Yeah.
I just want to say that I'm not a fan of Karma in a movie, or blue Karma like you.
Yeah.
But if you were to throw Boz and what happened to you, that's where I actually felt it was deserved.
And a bit of that was cut out.
You did such a great job that I felt like you would happy. I asked him. I have a hard time watching things like that, and I had no problem with that.
Yeah, no, deserved. Absolutely. Boggs was a prison predator, and it was effective. We terrorized Andy Dufresne enough that you were supposed to hate me. Of course you were. interestingly enough,
But I have empathy, no matter what, usually.
yeah. Yeah, and it's funny, like one of the things to be cut out of the movie when we got a couple days behind and things had to be cut. Well, originally in Shawshank, they're beating me up in the cell. They were supposed to beat me up briefly, and then they were going to, Clancy was going to grab me and they were going to toss me off the 4th tier. And I was going to go flying, and then we knew this amazing camera trick where I would be suspended by a wire doing this, and then they had another wire on a similar parallel angle, and they would run the camera up the wire, so it would be like a false perspective. The camera would run up, and it would make me look as if I was falling, but I wasn't really. That had to be cut because of time. But the most interesting thing that was cut out of the movie, which would have made it even more perfect, was, the penultimate scene when Andy crawls out the sewer, comes into and he's doing this, right? Well, in the real script, and I'll just suggest to you all a Christmas present idea, there's a book called Shawshank, the Final Shooting Script. Get it on Amazon. It's absolutely fantastic. It's the real final shooting script, along with Frank Darabont's anecdotes and commentary on what was cut, people's performances, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, little segue. So in the original script, when you get to that moment, what happens is Andy does this, and then what was supposed to be in the film was Andy running back up the hill toward the prison. And it was, imagine, it was an amazing shot. And this was all there at our location. There was a stream. He could have run from the stream, and the camera would have been like this on a wide angle going up, and with the prison looming in the background. Rain happening, wind, and the audience would have been going, "No, no, what are you doing?" And we also had a railroad track that ran down the side of the prison. And down the track, we had a vintage steam locomotive ready to roll, right? And in the original story, as he's running back and the audience is freaking out, here comes the locomotive, and Andy jumps onto the train, and that's how he got to the other town so quickly. But in the movie, as you see it, there's a jump cut. He gets out, and then he's in a bank, right? So if you also, next time you watch the movie, you'll notice there are moments when Andy's in his cell, and he has his little cell window, and as you look at it now, you think, oh, he's just seeing clouds in the sky, and he's yearning for the outdoors. It was, what was missing in the film, what they had to change, was that in the original script, Andy would hear the train locomotive, and he would see the puffs of steam. And so that when the cathartic moment happened and he jumped on the train, all of us in the audience would have gone, oh my God, he is amazing. This guy timed out his escape to the second. And it would have been so emotional. I mean, you would have just been beside yourself. So, and that had to be cut. And I remember when the producer, Nikki Marvin, told me this was going to be cut, I just said, Nikki, no. I said, look, I understand me, like being thrown, like we can cover that in another way, but don't lose the locomotive, because it was so romantic. And it was such a little detail. But the producers decided, and it still works. But now that I've told you, you're gonna watch this. You're gonna watch this and go, "Damn, Mark was right."
Do we have one more here? Okay.
I'll imagine that the next time I watch Shawshank.
Yeah. Well, you will notice in the scenes, you'll see Andy looking up at the window. You'll see these little puffs, but they just took out the sound effect, right? Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Thank you for telling us that. That is absolutely amazing. I want to go back to Aliens for a quick sec. I think it's one of the best action movies ever made in all time. I think it's in the top 5. I love Drake in that film. It's just so macho, so powerful. But one thing I wanted to ask you about, which I think is an interesting element of the film, is the props, the guns. And if you I don't want to get you emotional, but maybe if you got to know Bill Paxton a little bit, you could speak to about him a little bit and how you knew him. But the props in that, the guns are just, there's something so special about those props.
Yeah.
Can you talk about those, and maybe if we have time, a little bit about your work with Bill Paxton?
Sure. Well, the guns themselves, I mean, this is all Jim Cameron. You know, back at that time, Steadicam harnesses and the cantilevered arms was a brand new technology. You know, meant to, I'm sure you all know, I'll just repeat it anyway. The cantilever arm floated so that the camera, you could track people running, you could go up and downstairs, and the camera floats, and it's not doing this. So it smoothed out the whole filming process. Well, Cameron, being the genius he is, he's like, I'll stick a gun on the end of it. And the gun would float, and these guys would do this futuristic thing with the gun. And then Cameron, you know, being who it was a real live M180 anti-aircraft machine gun. You know, it was a massive gun. And what did Jim do? He had the prop guys weld motorcycle parts to it. So if you notice the gun, like there's the bits of metal that are shaped like this. It's like the carriage bit of the bottom of a motorcycle. And then he put motorcycle handles on it that we held on to. He took the muzzle of the gun, and instead of the flame just coming out the end, he had the pop guys drill holes all through the muzzles. And when you next watch the movie, it refracts, and it's the most brilliant visual, right? Because it's not just like, you know, pow, pow, pow. It's like anyway, so yeah, so there's that with the gun. And the funny thing is the first day we tested it, Jeanette and I got the harness on, we've got the gun, we're holding the guns, and Jim's looking at it, he's checking us out. He goes, great, great, great. He goes, now present the weapons, and we go like this. And because of the weight of the gun itself is around 80 pounds, but with the cantilevered arm, because it's pure steel, weighed probably another 30 pounds. So imagine we've got like 115 pounds, and as soon as we went like this with the gun, the entire harness went splat on the floor. And all the heads of departments, the prop guys, like we're all like, oh shit, what's Jim gonna say? And we're all like, and Jeanette and I are like, yeah, I don't know. And Jim goes, duct tape, duct tape. And we're like, what? And he goes, yeah, just tape it up. And here we are, rolls of duct tape, present the weapon, it's fine. That's what we did for the rest of the movie. So every morning, Jeanette and I would get the harness on, get the duct tape wrapped around us, and we wore the bloody thing the whole day. And then even more so, Jim, you know, because he was on the hook for any overages on the film, and Jim didn't understand the British way of like set protocols. Like in England, you know, you guys understand being Canadian. It's like, you know, there was tea time and there was afternoon tea, and the crew would have their break and they would catch a quick cup of tea and a sandwich and then continue working. Well, Jim, it drove him mad because he was like, what the fuck, we're supposed to be shooting. What is this serving tea and sandwiches in the middle of the day? Like, let him wait for fucking lunch. And all the British guys were like, hey, man, steady on, we need our tea and sandwiches. And
They take a nap.
and no naps. That's only in Italy. True. So what happened was you know, it all came to a head with the first AD, Derek Cracknell. I'm sure you've heard about this. There was a big thing. We almost lost him. We almost lost some of the English crew. Luckily, Sigourney was the linchpin. She interceded and she said, listen, Jim, you got to respect these people. If you want them to respect you, it's like, I mean, come on, we're here to work together and make a movie. And she was the pacifier. Smoothed it over with Jim, all great. But for Jeanette and I, Jim was determined that, like, when we'd have a break in between scenes and they're setting up elsewhere, and Paxton and Reiser are joking around with everybody and yucking it up and telling jokes and everything, there was Jeanette and I. Sitting on stools with the guns, because Jim didn't want to take the time to de-rig us, because it'd take too much time to put us back together again and shoot. So consequently, Jen and I became very good friends, because we would sit together and just chat, and we're friends to this day. You know, we've lived through births of children. Jeanette's son, Pablo, just got married a few days ago in Hawaii. So it's an amazing time that, we still share all that. And but it was tough, especially for Jeanette, because she, although she was, of all of us, she was ripped. Because, she finished drama school in England. She was working as an actress, but she decided to fill in her time. There happened to be a gym down the street from her house, and she'd been a gymnast as a child. And she thought, you know what? I was like lifting weights. I'm going to try bodybuilding. And before she got Alien, she had just completed a like Miss UK bodybuilding contest. She didn't win. She came in 5th. But it was her first ever competition.
Yeah.
And Jeanette, when I met her, was like, she had a 6-pack. She was jacked. And she put Rico and I to shame. She could do behind the neck, which is the most difficult pull-up all. That means like you're like this and you're behind your neck each time. She could rip these off like it was nothing. And Rico and I could do about 2. Rico maybe did 3. And so when you notice next time you watch the film, you're going to laugh on my expense because I'm cheating. I'm doing the easiest one like this while Jeanette is. So, yeah, she was really badass. And, so that's the whole bit about the gun. But, talking about Bill Paxton, Bill was the glue on our set. He not only is the most generous and fun-loving, enthusiastic person I've ever met, he would always be like I say, the glue. And like one time he came to me and he was like, "Hey, Mark, do you like Sigourney?" I was like, "Yeah." Like, what are you talking about? He goes, "Well, man, like she thinks you really hate her." I was like, "Well, I don't know, Bill. Maybe, I'm just in character or something." Because I always envisioned like Drake was just like a meathead. Jeanette, Vasquez and I took the opportunity to get out of a prison borstal. We were in prison. We had an opportunity to do this mission. We knew it'd be dangerous, but getting out of the fucking prison would be far better than staying there for the rest of our lives. So we made a pact that I'd watch her back, she'd watch my back. Nothing romantic, strictly friendship, a deep friendship. And that was our backstory there. But so anyway, so I whenever I was in character, I was always just like focused, just Drake, Drake do, okay, I do, so Bill actually patched up this whole thing. He's like, "Hey Sigourney, Mark, this is Mark," and I said, "Sigourney, I'm so sorry, I think you're great." And we started chatting, and I said, "I'm so sorry. I think I was just in character all the time, and I was working out so much, and this amino acid shit really kind of tricked my brain." But once we got, my son had just been born, so once we started about children, Sigourney was trying to have children, and that was it. We were friends after that, right? Which is amazing. But Bill loved this guy so much, and he was the reason I went to Hollywood, because I was living in England at the time, and my son being young, and Bill kept saying, "Dude, this is going to be huge. Like, you got to come to Hollywood. Come for the premiere. You don't want to miss this, Mark." Because he and I had talked. Like, I said, I kind of always knew, like, if you wanted to go to Hollywood, you better do it on the heels of a big hit movie. Like, you can't just show up in Hollywood and expect doors to open. But hit movie, oh yeah, people would be willing to talk to you. So Bill he would call me once a week and just exhort me to book that flight. And it finally got to the point I was like, "All right, Bill, I booked my ticket." He was like, Great, Mark, you can have my apartment. I'm gonna go stay with my girlfriend, and you come and stay, and dude, you're not gonna be disappointed." And show up, and sure enough, Bill vacated his apartment for me and actually Wiersbowski, and we stayed at Bill's apartment and went to the premiere, and then within 5 days, I'm starring in a movie with Lance Henriksen, Survival Quest. Yeah.
I love Lance Henriksen.
Yeah. The best. Oh.
I just get that vibe when he's acting that he's like just this super genuine person.
Oh. Lance was amazing. I mean, he not only is a really intense, committed actor. Again, he was a lot like Bill. He and Bill had a great relationship, great friendship, and showed up and, they did Near Dark together and stuff. But it was Bill Paxton that got me to Hollywood. And, can't ever thank him enough. And truth be told, like everyone says, like Tom Hanks is the most loved guy in Hollywood. It was Bill Paxton, man. No matter who you talk to. And when we had his memorial at Warner Brothers, about 2,000 people showed up. And I don't mean just any old body. I mean A-list directors beyond Jim Cameron, Sigourney, Tom Hanks, his very good friend, name escapes me in a second, but everyone spoke. And the most poignant thing, two things. First of all, Sigourney coined the term that, Bill was the glue. And she spoke about how, and Bill was like that. Even when we ended up doing Bill's first con was at Calgary, at the Calgary Stampede. And Bill, I'll never forget, he was like, God, Mark, I never knew you'd make this much money at these events. Like, what the hell? And he was just a Cheshire cat. And we were all supposed to get paid out in US dollars, so we don't have to do the exchange. Well, when it came time to pay me out, they were like, we're really sorry. We can only give you this much US, and I'm going to have to give you the rest in Canadian because Paxton made so much money. He made like $140,000. And Bill was stuffing it in his pockets, in his laundry bag and everything else. And the day we were leaving Calgary, he and Reiser went through customs first. And I was scared because, anything over $10,000 you're supposed to declare. Well, I had made almost 30. And I'm thinking, oh shit, so I'm doing the same thing. It's in my briefcase, it's in my laundry, I'm doing the whole, in socks. And luckily Bill went through, and as I was approaching the customs guy, like I'm very fair, but I'm not a good liar. So I get nervous, I go whoop, and I turn into a tomato. And my mouth was dry. I walk up to the guy and he goes, hey man, I know you've been at the show. And I just talked to Paxton and Reiser. And he's like, so how did it go for you? I was like, yeah, it was all right. Yeah, I didn't do what they did. And he's like, well, how much did you make? I was like, $8,500. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, go on through. And I was like, oh, good. Thank God. And Bill, we did another show shortly after in Houston that Sigourney and Jim didn't come, but Sigourney came too. And that was the last time I saw Billy. He had told me, he was like, because we had socialized a lot. I had him over my house for dinners, and because I've been a chef for a while, and I'm a real good cook, and my present wife is a great cook. And Bill had said, hey, I'm going to be in town doing a new series called Training Day, and I know you know all the good restaurants, so we got to go for a meal, Mark. And I was like, yeah, Bill. And I kicked myself because, I should have said, fuck that, Billy. Because he told me, he said, I'm going to have this surgery. And he explained, he said, he had a neck surgery 6 months prior, but he said, yeah, I got to do this heart thing. It kind of runs in my family. It's a congenital heart defect. My uncle died of it. My dad has it. And my doctor just suggested, because like a ticking time bomb thing. And I went, wow, Bill, I'm sorry. He said, let's wait for the dinner till after my surgery. And sure enough, he went into surgery, lasted the surgery, and he died in recovery. And that morning, wow, that was a smack in the face. And then to lose Bill, because he really is, honestly, such passion. He was a passionate filmmaker. And did you ever see his golf movie?
Greatest game ever played.
Freaking great movie. And he had to do with, what's the movie with Billy Bob?
The Gift.
Oh,
The Gift. Was it The Gift? What's it called?
Something planned. It's not Billy. No, like Billy. Not
Simple Plan.
Simple Plan.
Plan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
Simple
love
Plan.
that.
What a great movie!
movie.
What a great movie!
Steve Buscemi. Oh my goodness.
This is Bill Paxton, right?
Yeah.
And God, sorely missed, and wait. It's one of those things in life. God, man, had so much more to offer. The most poignant thing, though,
was at Bill's memorial. Jim Cameron got up and he said, hey, you know, I'm not known in this town as being a very warm and fuzzy guy. Laughter.
Yeah.
And then he said, but the thing I most regret in life is that the last time I spoke to Bill, the night before his surgery, I regret I never told him I loved him. And Jim had tears. And Jim is not a warm and fuzzy guy. But that's how much they loved each other. They were very, very, very close friends. And you know, the documentary about them going to the bottom of the ocean?
Yes.
This is a true story. So the submersible that they went down, and you know, Jim's brother is an engineer. So Jim has the idea, he hands it off to his brother, and his brother builds the ship. Well, his brother designed the submersible. In fact, they own the patent to that submersible. Yeah, it's extraordinary. So when they're going, Bill was in one submersible, Jim in the other, they went down to the bottom of the ocean. At the bottom of the ocean, Bill lost his navigation. And Bill, he told me, he said, talk about freaking out. He said, but I managed to get back to the top with no navigation, which is bizarre because the bottom of the ocean, it's absolute darkness.
Yeah.
And that was just extraordinary to me. But that's how close the two of them were. And yeah, we miss Bill a whole fucking lot. Yeah.
Well, as someone who's followed your career, this is a real pleasure to get to do this with
Cool.
you. So I appreciate it, man. Mark,